If you are seeing this, the version of you that has carried you up to this moment is already breaking apart. The fact that you are here is not coincidence, and it is not casual consumption. It is evidence that the internal structure you once called me can no longer hold the frequency you are inhabiting. This is what collapse feels like before the mind has language for it. Confusion is not a sign of regression. Emotional volatility is not failure. Instability is not weakness. These are symptoms of expansion pressing against a form that has become too small. An identity does not dissolve when it is wrong. It dissolves when it is complete. When its job is done. When the consciousness inside it has outgrown the shape. This is why nothing feels solid anymore. Old motivations no longer generate energy. Roles that once made sense now feel heavy or hollow. You may notice irritation where there used to be tolerance, sadness where there used to be certainty, or numbness where there used to be desire. This is not loss. This is pressure. Pressure from a deeper alignment attempting to emerge. The collapse is precise. It does not take what is real. It only removes what is outdated. But the mind interprets this as danger, because identity equates familiarity with safety. When the familiar begins to dissolve, the mind panics, even when what is dissolving is misaligned. That panic is not intuition. It is conditioning losing control. Nothing is going wrong here. What you are experiencing is the natural consequence of consciousness refining itself. Reality mirrors inner state, not words. And your inner state has shifted enough that the mirror can no longer reflect the same image. So the image fractures. This is why forcing clarity right now will not work. This is why trying to fix yourself will create resistance. The old identity wants answers. The new state requires allowance. The collapse cannot be stopped because it is not an attack. It is a release mechanism. You are not being stripped. You are being unburdened. Notice how this moment does not ask you to become something. It asks you to stop holding what you no longer are. Creation only happens in the present moment, and right now the present is doing one thing very clearly, dissolving what cannot come with you. There is intelligence in this. There is timing in this. There is no mistake in this appearing now. Recognition is enough. You do not need to act yet. You do not need to decide. You only need to see what is happening without resisting it. The moment you stop fighting the collapse, it stops feeling like destruction and starts revealing itself as precision. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. Identity never collapses randomly. It collapses only when it can no longer support the consciousness moving through it. This is a universal law. Expansion always comes first. The breakdown follows as a consequence, not as a cause. By the time an identity begins to fracture, the growth has already happened beneath the surface. An identity is a structure. It is a pattern of beliefs, emotional habits, self-definitions, and expectations that once made sense because they matched your internal state. But consciousness is not static. It refines. It clarifies. It expands. And when consciousness outgrows the structure meant to contain it, pressure builds. Not because something is wrong, but because something is finished. This is why identity must collapse before expansion can stabilize. Expansion without collapse would trap consciousness inside an outdated form. That friction would be unbearable. So reality resolves it the only way it can, by dissolving the container. Collapse is not punishment. It is intelligence. It is the system correcting for misalignment. When an identity is compatible, it feels effortless. When it is no longer compatible, it begins to resist life. What you experience as emotional friction is simply incompatibility made visible. Emotional friction is not an obstacle. It is a signal. Irritation, sadness, restlessness, anxiety, boredom, heaviness. These are not flaws in your process. They are indicators that the identity you are operating from has expired. Expansion has already occurred, but the self-image has not updated to match it. The mind interprets this friction as something to solve. But there is nothing to solve. The friction exists because you are trying to live from a structure that no longer fits. Forcing motivation, clarity, or certainty inside an expired identity only increases resistance. This is why effort feels draining right now. You are pushing energy through a form that cannot carry it. Collapse does not mean you are losing yourself. It means you are losing what you are not anymore. Consciousness never collapses. Only identities do. And identities collapse precisely because they were temporary. Reality mirrors inner state, not intention. As your inner state shifts, the mirror must change. If the mirror does not change smoothly, it cracks. That cracking is what you are feeling. Not chaos. Adjustment. This is why collapse often feels personal even though it is impersonal. The structure dissolving is personal, but the intelligence behind it is universal. The field is not reacting to your thoughts. It is responding to coherence. And coherence requires alignment between consciousness and identity. When alignment is lost, collapse restores it. Notice how this understanding removes blame. There is no failure here. There is no delay. There is no mistake. There is only timing. The identity you were using has served its function. Now it is stepping aside. If this recognition is landing clearly, like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. Discomfort is not a problem in your path. It is the path signaling that you are no longer aligned with the identity you are using to move through it. The mistake most people make is assuming that discomfort means something has gone wrong. In truth, discomfort appears when something has gone right and the internal structure has not yet caught up. Expansion and contraction are not emotional states to manage. They are directional signals. Expansion feels like openness, lightness, relief, or quiet clarity. Contraction feels like tightness, agitation, heaviness, confusion, or emotional pain. These sensations are not moral. They are informational. They tell you whether the identity you are inhabiting matches the consciousness you are expressing. When identity and consciousness are aligned, movement feels fluid. When they are misaligned, friction appears. That friction is what you call discomfort. It is not punishment. It is feedback. Emotional pain does not arise because you are wrong. It arises because something is outdated. An identity that once fit can become restrictive the moment consciousness expands beyond it. The pain you feel is not the expansion itself. It is the resistance between what you have become and what you are still pretending to be. This is why analysis often makes discomfort worse. The mind tries to fix what the body already understands. Sensation is faster than thought. The body registers misalignment instantly, while the mind looks for explanations, stories, and blame. But discomfort does not need interpretation. It needs permission. The intelligence inside discomfort is simple: stop reinforcing what no longer fits. Not by force. Not by rejection. By allowing the sensation to be present without assigning it meaning. The moment you stop labeling discomfort as a problem, it stops escalating. Because its job is not to hurt you. Its job is to redirect you. Contraction is not telling you to retreat. It is telling you that the current form cannot support forward movement. Expansion does not require pushing through contraction. It requires releasing the identity that created it. This is why trusting sensation matters more than understanding it. Sensation does not lie. It does not dramatize. It does not cling. It simply reports alignment or misalignment in real time. When you override sensation with analysis, you delay the adjustment. When you listen to sensation without fear, the adjustment happens naturally. Reality mirrors inner state, not effort. An inner state is felt before it is conceptualized. Your emotions are not obstacles to transcend. They are instruments of calibration. Discomfort appears when you are attempting to live from a version of yourself that has already expired. It is not asking you to fix the feeling. It is asking you to stop forcing continuity with the past. You do not need to resolve discomfort to move forward. You need to stop arguing with it. The moment you trust sensation more than explanation, the signal does its work and dissolves. This changes how you relate to everything. Confusion becomes guidance. Emotional pain becomes information. Contraction becomes clarity. Not because you analyzed it, but because you listened. The reality you experience is not responding to what you ask for. It is responding to what you are. This is the core misunderstanding that keeps identities locked in cycles of effort. Desire does not command the field. Identity does. And when identity shifts, reality reorganizes without instruction. Identity is not a label or a story. It is a frequency. A consistent emotional and perceptual state that broadcasts coherence or distortion into the field. Reality does not interpret your intentions. It reflects your internal condition. This is why repetition without alignment produces nothing, and why change sometimes happens the moment resistance drops. The field operates like a mirror, but not a visual one. It mirrors emotional tone, expectation, and self-definition. When you operate from an identity that assumes struggle, reality reflects obstacles. When you operate from an identity that assumes unworthiness, reality reflects delay. Not because the field is testing you, but because it is precise. Forcing outcomes fails because force is a signal of misalignment. Force communicates lack. It says, what I am being is not enough to allow this naturally. The field does not respond to the words inside that force. It responds to the state beneath them. And the state beneath force is resistance. This is why effort feels heavy when identity is unchanged. You are trying to extract results from a frequency that cannot generate them. No amount of strategy can override a mismatched signal. Reality mirrors inner state, not tactics. When identity shifts, action becomes minimal. Not because nothing is done, but because what is done is coherent. There is no friction between intention and being. The field responds quickly because it is not being contradicted internally. This is also why collapse is necessary. An old identity continues broadcasting an outdated signal. Even if consciousness has expanded, the field can only respond to what is being transmitted consistently. Until the old signal destabilizes, the mirror cannot change. Identity collapse interrupts the broadcast. It introduces noise, confusion, emotional instability. But this disruption is not dysfunction. It is recalibration. The field cannot respond cleanly until a new coherence forms. Trying to force outcomes during this phase only prolongs the distortion. It reinforces the old frequency under the illusion of progress. Allowing, on the other hand, reduces interference. It creates space for a new signal to stabilize. This is not passive. It is intelligent non-resistance. The field reorganizes fastest when it is not being corrected. You do not need to convince reality of anything. You do not need to persuade it. You need to notice who you are being while you wait for results. That is the only lever that exists. When identity aligns, results follow as side effects. When identity resists, results stall regardless of effort. The field is always responding. There are no exceptions. If you do not like what is being reflected, the answer is not to argue with the mirror. It is to let the image dissolve so a new one can form. This is not about wanting differently. It is about being differently. Control appears strongest at the exact moment it is no longer needed. This is not coincidence. Control is the final defense of an identity that senses its own expiration. When a structure begins to collapse, it does not release quietly. It tightens. It grasps. It attempts to reassert relevance by managing outcomes, thoughts, timelines, and emotions. This is why the urge to control intensifies right before a shift. The identity feels the ground dissolving beneath it and mistakes surrender for annihilation. So it reaches for certainty. Plans. Rules. Strategies. Fixes. Not because they are effective, but because they are familiar. Control is not power. It is fear trying to maintain continuity. Forcing is the behavioral expression of that fear. Forcing clarity. Forcing decisions. Forcing progress. Forcing healing. Each act of force communicates the same message to the field: I do not trust what is happening. And the field responds precisely to that state by introducing more resistance. Resistance is not created by circumstance. It is created by opposition to what is already unfolding. When you push against the collapse, you generate friction. That friction is what exhausts you, not the process itself. Allowing, on the other hand, is not giving up. It is removing interference. It is the recognition that intelligence is already active and does not require supervision. Allowing does not mean nothing happens. It means what happens is not distorted by fear-based correction. The old identity cannot survive allowing. That is why it avoids it. Allowing dissolves the illusion that control is necessary. And when that illusion fades, the identity built around it has no function. This is why control feels urgent right now. It is not because something needs to be handled. It is because something needs to end. The identity that once protected you is trying to justify its existence. But protection is no longer required. Consciousness has outgrown the threat. Reality mirrors inner state, not effort. Control communicates distrust. Allowing communicates coherence. One creates friction. The other creates flow. Notice how forcing narrows perception. It creates tunnel vision. It accelerates time. It makes everything feel heavy and serious. Allowing expands perception. It slows time. It introduces space where solutions arise without struggle. You do not need to drop control all at once. You only need to see it clearly. The moment control is recognized as fear, it loosens naturally. Recognition is enough. Effort is unnecessary. This is the threshold. Not between success and failure, but between identities. One survives by managing. The other exists by coherence. You do not have to know what comes next to release what is ending. You only need to be willing to stop defending what no longer fits. If this willingness is present, anchor it now. Comment with the words, I am ready, to anchor this timeline. Control fades when readiness is acknowledged. And when control fades, the collapse completes without resistance. Letting go feels like losing everything because the nervous system does not understand identity as an abstract concept. It understands it as survival. Identity is associated with safety, predictability, and continuity. So when an identity begins to dissolve, the body reacts as if something essential is being taken away, even when nothing real is at risk. This reaction is automatic. It is not insight. It is biology responding to unfamiliar territory. The nervous system is designed to protect what is known. It does not evaluate alignment or truth. It evaluates familiarity. When familiar patterns, roles, expectations, or self-definitions start to loosen, the body sounds an alarm. Fear arises not because danger is present, but because certainty is disappearing. This is why letting go feels dramatic. Not because the loss is real, but because attachment is being withdrawn. Attachment carries emotional charge. When it releases, the mind interprets the drop in charge as emptiness. But emptiness is not absence. It is space. Nothing of value is disappearing here. What is dissolving is the emotional grip you had on what once defined you. The value was never in the identity. The value was in the consciousness experiencing through it. And that consciousness is untouched. Loss is a story the mind tells when attachment loosens faster than understanding. But if you look closely, you will notice that what you fear losing is not actually gone. The skills remain. The intelligence remains. The awareness remains. What is gone is the compulsion to hold them in a specific shape. The nervous system resists this because it equates attachment with control. And control has been its method of maintaining safety. When control fades, the body assumes exposure. But this exposure is not danger. It is openness. This is why awareness is the stabilizing factor. Awareness does not disappear when identity does. Awareness does not panic. It does not rush. It does not cling. It simply notices. When you rest attention in awareness rather than in the sensations of fear, the nervous system recalibrates. It learns that nothing bad is happening. Safety is not located in identity. It is located in presence. The more you try to convince yourself that nothing is wrong, the more the body resists. But when you allow the fear to be present without trying to eliminate it, the fear loses its authority. It was never a warning. It was a reflex. Letting go does not require trust in the future. It requires trust in what is here now. And what is here now is awareness witnessing sensation. That is enough. That has always been enough. Reality mirrors inner state, not reassurance. When the inner state settles into presence, the mirror softens. The sense of loss dissolves because there is nothing missing in the present moment. What remains when attachment withdraws is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is spaciousness. It is relief disguised as uncertainty. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the tension of holding yourself together. And as that tension releases, something becomes very clear. You are never being held up by the identity you are letting go of. You are being held by awareness all along. Creation does not happen across time. It happens in one place only. Now. This is not philosophy. It is mechanics. Identity does not change gradually across past and future. It changes the moment attention stabilizes in the present. Every real shift occurs here, or it does not occur at all. The past cannot be edited because it is no longer active. It exists only as memory, and memory has no creative authority. The future cannot be edited because it does not exist yet. It is a projection formed by the current identity. Any attempt to change yourself by revisiting the past or controlling the future is an attempt to work outside the only point of access available. The present moment is not a slice of time. It is a state of awareness. When awareness is fully here, identity loses its grip. Not because it is attacked, but because it is no longer being referenced. The old self survives by being remembered and anticipated. It draws energy from replaying what has been and rehearsing what might be. When attention collapses into now, that energy source disappears. The identity begins to dissolve on its own. This is why presence feels destabilizing at first. The mind equates time with continuity. When time drops away, the structure built inside it starts to weaken. Thoughts slow. Narratives lose urgency. Emotional charge dissipates. The identity has nothing to anchor to. You do not dissolve the old self by trying to change it. You dissolve it by no longer visiting it. Awareness in the present moment does not fight identity. It outgrows it. This is also why clarity often arrives without effort when you stop thinking about your situation. Not because the problem was solved, but because the identity that defined it lost coherence. Problems require a self positioned in time. Presence removes that position. Creation happens only now because now is the only place where identity is flexible. In the present, you are not a past version trying to improve, nor a future version trying to arrive. You are awareness without a reference point. From that state, reorganization happens naturally. This does not require constant focus or discipline. It requires noticing when attention drifts into mental time and gently allowing it to return. No force. No correction. Just recognition. The moment awareness returns to now, the system recalibrates. Emotional charge reduces. Resistance softens. The collapse that once felt chaotic begins to feel neutral, even quiet. Not because anything has been fixed, but because nothing is being held in place anymore. Reality mirrors inner state, not intention. When inner state is present, reality stops reflecting struggle. It reflects simplicity. The field responds to the absence of interference. The present moment is not something you enter. It is something you stop leaving. And every time you stop leaving it, the old identity loses another layer of relevance. Nothing needs to be added here. Nothing needs to be removed. Presence does the work automatically. This is how collapse completes without force. Not across time. Not through effort. But here. Now. Stillness is often misunderstood because it does not announce itself. It does not arrive with emotion, urgency, or direction. And yet, stillness is the most powerful state the system can enter. Not because nothing is happening, but because nothing is interfering. Emotional neutrality is not numbness. It is not disengagement. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of distortion. When emotional charge drops away, perception becomes clear. The system returns to zero, and zero is where reorganization begins. All structure requires noise to maintain itself. Identity survives on emotional charge. Reaction feeds it. Story reinforces it. When reactions quiet, the structure loses energy. This is why stillness often feels unfamiliar. The mind expects something to be happening. When nothing is being pushed or resisted, it interprets the calm as emptiness. But emptiness is not lack. It is capacity. Stillness is the threshold state where the old identity has loosened but the new one has not yet formed. It is the space between signals. In this space, the field recalibrates without instruction. Patterns dissolve because they are no longer being reinforced. New coherence forms because there is no competing broadcast. This is why calm can feel unsettling. The mind associates intensity with aliveness. When intensity fades, it assumes something is missing. But what is missing is not life. It is friction. Potency does not feel loud. It feels grounded. Neutrality is powerful because it does not leak energy. There is no emotional pull toward the past or push toward the future. Awareness rests where it is, and from that rest, reorganization happens naturally. Stillness does not need to be created. It appears when resistance drops. The moment you stop trying to feel a certain way, neutrality emerges on its own. This is not an achievement. It is a return. Nothing needs to be decided in this state. Nothing needs to be clarified. The urge to move, fix, or label is the last echo of identity trying to remain relevant. When that urge passes, what remains is simple presence. Reality mirrors inner state, not momentum. When inner state becomes still, reality stops presenting obstacles that require reaction. It does not rush to deliver answers. It softens. This is why forcing emotion during this phase is counterproductive. Forcing positivity, motivation, or certainty reintroduces noise. It rebuilds structure prematurely. Stillness is where the collapse completes cleanly. You are not meant to stay here forever. But you are meant to pass through without resistance. This is the recalibration chamber. The pause before coherence stabilizes. Trust the quiet. Not because it promises something, but because it is doing something. The most profound changes occur when nothing appears to be happening. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is life reorganizing itself without interference. Effort ends the moment recognition begins. This is not a motivational idea. It is a structural truth. Identity does not change through repetition, discipline, or willpower. It changes when something is seen clearly enough that it can no longer be unseen. That seeing completes the pattern automatically. Effort belongs to the identity that believes it must become something. Recognition belongs to awareness realizing something has already ended. One tries to move forward. The other notices there is nothing left to carry. Striving persists only where there is misunderstanding. When the mind believes a pattern is unfinished, it keeps working on it. When the mind sees that a pattern has run its course, effort drops instantly. Not because of discipline, but because there is nothing left to do. This is how recognition works. It does not add. It subtracts illusion. Think of how a habit falls away once it is fully understood. Not intellectually explained, but seen in its entirety. The moment its function is recognized, the compulsion dissolves. There is no battle. No maintenance. No replacement required. The pattern completes itself. Identity collapse follows the same principle. The old self does not need to be dismantled piece by piece. It needs to be seen as no longer relevant. The moment that recognition stabilizes, the identity loses coherence. It cannot survive being clearly perceived. This is why effort feels exhausting right now. You are trying to maintain something that awareness is already outgrowing. Effort is the sound of an outdated structure being dragged forward. Recognition is the silence that follows release. Clear seeing does not come from analysis. It comes from stillness. From neutrality. From allowing the full picture to emerge without defending or justifying any part of it. When you see an identity clearly, including its limits, strategies, fears, and motivations, you stop identifying with it naturally. No force is required because force would imply attachment. Recognition has no attachment. It simply notices. This is also why repetition is unnecessary. You do not need to remind yourself of what you have seen. Once something is recognized as complete, the system reorganizes around that recognition automatically. The field responds to coherence, and recognition creates coherence instantly. Reality mirrors inner state, not effort. The moment inner state shifts from striving to clarity, reality adjusts without delay. Not as a reward, but as a reflection. This is the end of trying to fix yourself. There was nothing broken. There was only a pattern waiting to be understood fully enough to dissolve. And understanding, in this context, is not conceptual. It is perceptual. It is seeing without resistance. You do not need to push the old identity away. You only need to stop pretending it is still necessary. The moment you stop pretending, effort collapses under its own weight. Recognition does not feel dramatic. It feels quiet. Final. Undeniable. Like setting something down and realizing you were done carrying it long ago. This is how identity shifts actually happen. Not through becoming. Through seeing. And once something is seen clearly, it cannot continue. That is not willpower. That is completion. You do not move through reality selecting timelines like destinations on a map. Timelines are not places you travel to. They are responses that stabilize around who you are being. Identity is not moving toward a future. It is broadcasting coherence in the present, and reality organizes itself accordingly. A timeline is simply a consistent pattern of cause and effect that can remain stable only while identity supports it. When identity changes, the timeline must either adapt or dissolve. There is no choice involved. There is only compatibility. This is why coherence is the true selector. Coherence means alignment between consciousness, emotion, perception, and action. When these elements are synchronized, reality reflects a stable path. When they are fragmented, reality fragments as well. Not as punishment, but as feedback. You do not enter a timeline by wanting it. Wanting implies distance. Wanting implies lack. Timelines stabilize when there is no contradiction between who you are and what is unfolding. When identity is coherent, the field has no resistance to work with. It simply responds. Collapse plays a crucial role here. When identity shifts, timelines that depended on the old structure can no longer remain open. They close. This is not loss. It is pruning. Incompatible paths dissolve because they cannot sustain coherence with the new signal. This is why collapse often feels like doors closing, opportunities disappearing, relationships changing, plans unraveling. The mind interprets this as regression. But what is actually happening is precision. Paths that required an outdated version of you are withdrawing access. Nothing aligned is taken away. Only what required misalignment to continue. You are not being redirected. You are being simplified. The number of viable paths reduces as coherence increases. This feels restrictive at first because the identity equates options with freedom. But freedom does not come from options. It comes from alignment. When identity is fragmented, many timelines appear possible, but none stabilize. When identity becomes coherent, fewer timelines remain, but they move effortlessly. This is the difference between scattered potential and embodied direction. Reality mirrors inner state, not desire. When inner state stabilizes, the mirror stabilizes. Timelines are not chosen mentally. They are confirmed energetically. This is also why forcing a specific future creates instability. Force introduces contradiction. It says, I am not aligned yet, but I want the result anyway. The field cannot stabilize a timeline built on contradiction. So it collapses it repeatedly. Collapse is not failure to manifest. It is refusal to support incoherence. When you stop trying to enter timelines and allow identity to settle, timelines organize themselves around you. You do not chase them. You stand still, and the compatible ones remain. This is not passive. It is precise. Identity coherence is active alignment, not effort. And as coherence deepens, the noise of unnecessary futures fades. What remains is not a chosen path, but a natural one. One that does not require motivation to maintain, because it is not being maintained by effort. You were never meant to navigate timelines. You were meant to become coherent enough that only one could hold. Magnetism increases the moment seeking collapses. This appears counterintuitive only because desire has been mistaken for power. In reality, desire signals separation. It announces that something is not here yet, not embodied yet, not aligned yet. The field does not respond to what you want. It responds to the state you are holding while you want it. When seeking drops, neutrality emerges. And neutrality is not indifference. It is coherence without urgency. It is presence without grasping. In this state, identity is no longer reaching outward to complete itself. It is stable within itself. That stability is what creates magnetism. Attraction does not come from desire. It comes from wholeness. The self that no longer seeks does not emit lack. It emits sufficiency. And sufficiency is a clean signal. The field can respond to it without distortion. Seeking introduces noise. It fragments attention. It pulls awareness into imagined futures and unmet expectations. That fragmentation weakens the signal. Even when desire is intense, its intensity comes from absence. The field mirrors that absence by delaying or deflecting. Neutrality removes that contradiction. When there is no internal argument about whether something should arrive, the field has nothing to resist. Magnetism is not created by wanting more. It is created by needing nothing to validate the self. This is why attraction often appears strongest when you stop thinking about outcomes. Not because you gave up, but because you stopped interfering. Identity settled. The broadcast stabilized. Reality responded. The self that no longer seeks is not passive. It is grounded. It moves without chasing. It acts without attachment. Its actions are coherent because they are not compensatory. Nothing is being done to fill a gap. The field responds differently to this state. It does not need persuasion. It does not need visualization. It recognizes coherence and aligns naturally. What aligns is not pulled in. It remains. Magnetism is not about pulling things toward you. It is about no longer pushing them away through contradiction. Seeking says, I am not complete yet. Neutrality says nothing. And in that silence, alignment happens. This is why effortful attraction exhausts the system. It is trying to override an internal lack with external movement. That never stabilizes. When the lack dissolves, attraction no longer requires energy. Reality mirrors inner state, not desire. When inner state becomes neutral, reality mirrors simplicity. There is less drama, less chasing, less fluctuation. Things either fit and stay, or they fall away quickly. The self that no longer seeks does not measure progress. It does not scan for outcomes. It is present. And presence is the most magnetic state available because it does not divide attention. This does not mean nothing is wanted. It means wanting is no longer tied to identity. Outcomes are preferences, not validations. When identity stops leaning on results, results reorganize effortlessly. Magnetism is not something you practice. It is something that remains when seeking ends. And seeking ends the moment the self realizes it is not incomplete. When the field starts responding differently, it is rarely dramatic. There are no announcements. No sudden confirmations meant to convince you of anything. The shift is subtle, almost quiet, and easy to miss if you are still watching for proof. That is because these responses are not rewards. They are reflections. One of the first changes is internal. You react differently. Situations that once triggered urgency, defensiveness, or emotional charge no longer hook you the same way. The stimulus may still appear, but the response is softer, slower, or absent altogether. This is not detachment. It is alignment. The identity that required those reactions is no longer active. External feedback begins to change as well, but not in ways designed to impress. Conversations feel lighter. Interactions resolve themselves with less effort. Obstacles dissolve without confrontation. Sometimes things simply stop happening. Delays disappear. Conflicts lose momentum. These are not events to collect or interpret. They are byproducts of coherence. The field responds to who you are being, not to what you are monitoring. The moment you start tracking changes as evidence, you reintroduce seeking. And seeking collapses neutrality. That is why the most accurate confirmations arrive when you are not looking for them. You may notice that what used to require explanation no longer does. You do less convincing. Less justifying. Less managing. Reality meets you halfway because there is no longer internal resistance asking it not to. Another subtle shift is timing. Things arrive neither rushed nor delayed. They appear when they fit, and disappear when they do not, without emotional drama. This is not because you have gained control. It is because control is no longer interfering. These responses are not signs that you are on the right path. They are indications that the concept of a right path is dissolving. The field is not guiding you forward. It is aligning around you. Reality mirrors inner state, not expectation. When expectation drops, reality simplifies. When attachment loosens, movement becomes smooth. Nothing needs to be interpreted. Nothing needs to be held. This is where many people get pulled back into effort. They feel the shift, notice the changes, and try to sustain them. But sustainability is not achieved by attention. It is achieved by coherence. The moment you try to hold on to a response, you destabilize it. Trust is the stabilizer here. Not trust that something good will happen, but trust that what is unfolding does not require supervision. The field does not need to be managed. It needs space. What is aligning now does not need to be secured. What is leaving does not need to be stopped. Both are happening because identity has settled into a state that no longer contradicts itself. Let the responses come and go without naming them. Let reactions soften without explanation. Let feedback shift without meaning-making. The more you trust the unfolding, the quieter it becomes. And in that quiet, alignment sustains itself without effort. Nothing needs to be confirmed. The fact that nothing needs confirmation anymore is the confirmation. Awareness is the only constant that has never changed. Before every identity you have worn, before every role, belief, fear, ambition, or attachment, awareness was present. It did not arrive with the identity, and it does not leave when the identity dissolves. This is the ground that makes the collapse understandable rather than threatening. The identity that collapsed was never who you were. It was a structure consciousness used to interact with the world. Useful. Functional. Temporary. When its usefulness ended, it released. What remains is not absence. It is what was always here, unobstructed. Identification with form creates the illusion of loss. When awareness mistakes itself for a role, a personality, or a story, the dissolution of that structure feels like death. But awareness does not die. It does not fragment. It does not diminish. Only the form changes. The collapse you experienced was not something being taken away. It was something being returned. Energy that was locked into maintaining a self-image is released back into presence. The tension of becoming dissolves. The effort of continuity relaxes. Liberation does not feel dramatic at first. It feels quiet. Neutral. Almost ordinary. That is because the mind expects freedom to announce itself. But freedom is the absence of pressure, not the presence of intensity. You are not what you do. You are not what you think. You are not what you feel. These are activities appearing within awareness. When identification drops, they continue to arise, but they no longer define you. They no longer require defense. This is why the collapse ultimately feels relieving. Even when fear was present during the process, there is a subtle sense of lightness afterward. Less to maintain. Less to prove. Less to protect. That relief is recognition surfacing. Nothing essential has been lost. What dissolved was a reference point. A way of organizing experience that had reached its limit. Awareness does not need reference points to exist. It only used them for navigation. Reality mirrors inner state, not identity. When identity loosens, the mirror reflects spaciousness. Life feels less personal, less heavy. Events still occur, but they do not define you. Success and failure lose their grip. Approval and rejection soften. This is not detachment from life. It is intimacy without ownership. Experience flows through awareness without sticking. There is participation without possession. The collapse was not an ending. It was a reveal. It revealed that you were never the structure that fell away. You were the field in which it appeared. Once this is seen, there is nothing to rebuild. Identity may reform in lighter, more flexible ways, but it is no longer mistaken for the self. It becomes a tool rather than a prison. What remains now is simple. Awareness aware of itself. Calm. Unthreatened. Unbound. This is not something new you have become. It is what you have always been, finally unobstructed. There is a point where nothing needs to be done, adjusted, or understood further. Consciousness rests there naturally once identification has loosened. From this position, reorganization happens on its own, without commentary or effort. This is not a practice. It is a state that remains when interference has ended. Consciousness does not rebuild identity deliberately. It allows patterns to reform only if they are useful. What returns does so lightly, without rigidity. What does not return simply has no energy to reappear. From the witness position, this process is observed rather than managed. Thoughts arise. Emotions move. Preferences form. Actions happen. But none of these require ownership. They are seen as movements within awareness, not definitions of it. Identity becomes an interface rather than a center. Functional, adaptable, and optional. This is why nothing feels urgent here. Urgency belonged to the identity that needed continuity. Without that need, experience unfolds at its own pace. Decisions occur without internal debate. Responses happen without rehearsal. There is movement, but no push behind it. Consciousness watching itself reorganize is quiet. There is no evaluation of progress. No comparison with past states. No anticipation of what should come next. The system is trusted to arrange itself according to coherence rather than control. When attention rests here, effort does not sneak back in. Even improvement loses its appeal. Not because growth has stopped, but because growth no longer needs a manager. What aligns stays. What does not align dissolves quickly and without drama. This witnessing is not detached. It is intimate without identification. Experience is felt fully, but it does not stick. Joy arises without clinging. Discomfort arises without resistance. Both pass through without altering the ground they appear in. Reality mirrors inner state, and the inner state here is non-interference. As a result, external life simplifies. Complexity reduces. Interactions feel straightforward. Situations resolve themselves with minimal involvement. Not because of effort, but because friction is absent. From this position, identity is no longer a problem to solve. It is a pattern that forms when needed and dissolves when unnecessary. There is no fear of collapse anymore, because collapse has been seen through. Nothing essential was ever at risk. This is stabilization without fixation. Balance without control. Presence without effort. Consciousness does not rush to define itself again. It allows form to arise naturally, shaped by coherence rather than history. The past has no authority here. The future has no pull. Only what is relevant now takes shape. There is ease in this. Not excitement. Not intensity. Ease. The kind that does not need explanation. Nothing is being held together. Nothing is falling apart. What remains is awareness watching movement without becoming it. This is not an achievement. It is what is left when striving ends. And from here, whatever reforms does so in alignment, without resistance, without weight, and without needing to be named. Nothing is ending. What feels like an ending is release being misinterpreted by a mind trained to equate continuity with safety. Endings belong to stories. What is happening here is structural letting go. A loosening of tension that no longer needs to be maintained. The collapse was never about loss. It was about efficiency. Consciousness does not hold what it has outgrown. It releases it. Quietly. Precisely. Without drama. What fell away did so because it was no longer required to maintain coherence. Throughout this process, something important has remained untouched. Awareness never fractured. Presence never diminished. The sense of being never weakened. Only the effort to define it did. That effort was heavy. Its release is light. This is why the final stage does not feel explosive. It feels settled. Still. Certain. The nervous system no longer scans for danger because there is nothing left to defend. The mind no longer searches for meaning because meaning is no longer outsourced to identity. Collapse completes when there is no impulse to rebuild what dissolved. Not because rebuilding is wrong, but because nothing feels missing. When absence reveals itself as space, grasping ends naturally. You may notice that the urgency to explain your process fades. The desire to label what happened disappears. Language feels less necessary. This is not confusion. It is clarity without form. Everything that mattered survived because it was never part of what collapsed. Skills remain. Intelligence remains. Sensitivity remains. What left was weight. Assumption. Rigidity. The need to be someone in order to be here. This is release. Not erasure. Reality mirrors inner state, and the inner state now is unburdened. The field responds by softening. Life simplifies. Not because complexity was wrong, but because complexity is unnecessary when coherence is present. There is nothing left to chase. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to become. What unfolds from here will do so without effort because it will not be compensatory. It will not be trying to prove alignment. It will be aligned by default. This does not mean life stops moving. It means movement no longer creates friction. Decisions arise without anxiety. Action happens without identity investment. Rest occurs without guilt. Stillness is not stagnation. It is completion. You do not need to remember every insight from this process. What matters has already integrated. What did not integrate was not essential. The system keeps what is coherent and releases the rest. This is the quiet certainty that remains when collapse is finished. No fireworks. No declarations. Just a deep sense that nothing important was ever at risk. What comes next does not require preparation. It requires presence. And presence is already here. Stay here. Let what reforms do so lightly. Let what dissolves go without commentary. Nothing is ending. Everything is releasing. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.